Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. So, for all you Audie fans, he is sunning himself in the front window. He is grateful to have the sun because we've had a couple of dark, gloomy days, and he's never happy when the weather isn't going well. But yes, he's out there just sunning. It was cold today. The actual recorded temperature was somewhere in the 40s, but it felt like it was in the low 30s because of the wind chill factor. And I honestly have to say, to me, it felt colder than that because the winds were, well, up to 22 miles an hour, which is pretty significant. So Audie, I thought he would be unhappy because it was feeling cold, but no. He's got the sunshine, and apparently that's enough for a cat. So he's happy, and I'm happy for him because he doesn't yell at me quite so much when he's got sunshine to sleep in. So he may show up, I don't know. He has been sleeping out there for a while. Yellow. Got yellow for Catherine, for Lex's mom, for everyone coping with cancer. We are just sending our very, very best wishes out to you. And today, I thought we would talk about something I came across on my YouTube feed. Never watched the video in question, but it did, in fact, spark an epiphany. Thought we'd talk about that. And we will be back to do so after the intro in 22 seconds. So, what was this YouTube video and the epiphany, etc.? Well, I watch a lot of content that is created by seamstresses. We've talked about that before. I guess they say it's sewists. It's not a word that makes sense in my head. And in fact, my default is sewer, which is spelled exactly the same way sewer is spelled. Consequently, it's probably not a very flattering term. But I do enjoy those channels, and this came up because I had been watching The Closet Historian. That's one of my favorites. And I had also been watching a video by Abby Cox, another one of my favorites. And this video was about Joann Fabrics going into bankruptcy. So, for those of you who are not familiar with Joann Fabrics, and I imagine our overseas friends are not, and many people in the U.S. who do not sew themselves might not be. And this started off, I believe they started in Cleveland as a small fabric shop in the 50s, early 60s. By the mid-60s, they had begun their expansion. And as of this bankruptcy proceeding, there were Joann stores in almost every state in the U.S. So they were sort of the go-to fabric store for the home sewer. And they were never a favorite of mine. You could go in there, you could get a lot of notions, but basically, if you wanted fabric, you go in there and you would get a lot of polyester and quilting cottons, and those were never my fabrics of choice. But it was always nice to know they were around. Well, Joann was bordering on bankruptcy in 2019. The pandemic came along. Suddenly, everybody's making masks, not just for themselves, but in lockdown, people who could sew were making masks for charitable purposes. They were making masks, they were giving them to hospitals, nursing homes, their community, etc. People made small businesses and selling their masks on eBay, Etsy, whatever. So Joann went from taking a massive loss in 2019 to earning a profit in 2020. But the pandemic was a blip on the radar. And of course, when I say, yes, they profited from the pandemic, I don't mean that in a negative sense. People whose businesses soar in times of disaster are fire departments, police departments, hospitals, emergency workers, and I don't think anyone would characterize them as profiting from disaster, but it's the nature of some businesses that when bad times come, those businesses prosper. And Lord, way back when I was in college studying economics, so yeah, the world economic landscape was a very different place then. We looked at things like, for example, appliance repair. When economic times go down, people have less money. Appliance repair business goes up for obvious reasons. And I think that was what happened with Joann. They got a break because the pandemic threw a lot of business their way, especially with people in lockdown. Some of those people sewed, and if you sewed and you were locked in your house, you were buying fabric. So, nevertheless, it wasn't enough to salvage the business. But the real problem is not a lack of pandemics. The real problem is a lack of home sewers. Because times have changed. Home sewing was something I grew up with. Many people in my generation grew up with it. Certainly my mother's generation, my grandmother's generation, that was just their life. When I was young, we studied it in school. Home economics. We'd spend half of the year, so it would be one semester on cooking, another semester on sewing. That was how we acquired our home economics credit. And keep in mind that I was in high school in the late 60s and early 70s, not in the 1940s. So even then, these were skills that were considered valuable enough to want to teach them to young people and to want to pass them along. And they were considered necessary. I have always been glad that I know how to cook. I don't like it, but I know how to do it, and I know how to sew, and I do like sewing. So, I don't know, we're losing skills, and that's what this whole long circuitous path led me to. That was the epiphany. Joann's declaring bankruptcy. We are losing skills that society once considered important, and that I personally value in my own life. Because, let's face it, if I want what I want, which I do, because yeah, I'm a little spoiled, if I go out shopping for something, I want an article of clothing. I want exactly what I want. And part of that comes from the fact that because I sew, I know I can have exactly what I want. If I can't find it in a store, I can make it. And I did always in the past make a certain percentage of my own clothing. There were things I did not make. For example, I think it was around the 1980s that I stopped making blouses because it was cheaper and easier to get them in the stores. If I wanted to make a blouse, I was going to have to find a store that would sell me a good quality silk fabric. Because, hey, if I'm going to make it, I'm not going to make it out of a polyester remnant. And then when I looked at the cost for that yard of fabric and compared it to the cost of a blouse at Sears, because we did have Sears stores in those days, I realized it was cheaper to just go out and buy it. And in a way, my standards dropped commensurately. I'm pickier when I do it myself, a lot pickier than if I'm simply going into a store. If I'm making something myself, well, yes, if I'm putting the effort into it, it's going to be silk, by golly. But if I'm buying it in a store, Oh, it's cute, it's polyester, I'll buy it, I'll take it home. I've moved away from that mindset. And keep in mind that when this was happening in the late 70s, early 80s, it was in the days before this explosion of fast fashion. It was just, the way life was. I could get what I wanted in a store for less. And also, see, this is the other factor. I was young in the 70s and 80s. Consequently, what I wanted was what was fashionable at the time. I am no longer in that age group, so now I want different things. I want things that are not in the stores. And we've talked about it. We've talked about this. You've seen this before. This is a men's Henley shirt, and I got this online. It's wool. I can't get this in a store. And I know because I've tried, because I like this particular style. And over the last year, I think I have purchased 4 or 5 Henleys at stores, and they have all ended up in the donation box. And I'm okay with that. I don't mind if I spend some money and it's going on clothing that someone who can't afford it is going to be able to use. I can live with that. I'm not angry that I wasted the money, because it's not really a waste. The money is buying clothing that someone will enjoy. I'm okay with that. But I was getting very angry that I couldn't get what I wanted. And so when I did, after, it's like, how many of these things do you need to buy to realize that the stuff they're selling in the stores is not suiting your needs? Well, in my case, it probably would have been 5 or 6, because that's how many I got before I hit this point. So I did find this, and this guy has a friend or two that I bought from the same company, because yes, this is the good one. This is the one I will like. This is the one I will keep. This is not going in the donation box. But I am getting fussier about the things I want. And like I said, this is just one of them. So the idea of being able to sew what I would like to have for myself is a valuable skill in my life. This gives me a tangible benefit. So I look at stores that sell fabrics going out of business, and then I started doing some research. I am not finding facts and figures on this, so you are getting my best estimates. I would say that in all likelihood, the number of home sewers has decreased in my lifetime by easily more than 50%. So half as many people in the world, population's going up, number of sewers going down, and it's just becoming a dead skill. And I've noticed the same thing with home cooking. Now, I blame this on 1979. Remember, that was our pivotal year when more than 50% of the female population in the United States was in the workforce. Prior to that, more than 50% had been stay-at-home wives, moms. Changed. Now women are working. And almost everybody who is working is working. Within the employable population. Men are working, women are working. It's interesting to note that in my lifetime alone, one income could support a family. Now we've got 2 incomes and people are in trouble. Not sure what that's all about. I'm going to have to do a little research on that, but that is a video for another day. Right now, just looking at the fact that women are working 40 hours a week, they are coming home, they don't have time, probably don't have the inclination, and certainly are no longer being taught the skills to make clothing for their family, to even make dinner for their family. Most of the young women of my acquaintance, and by that I mean women under 40, really don't know how to cook. And honestly, they don't. They can cook packaged food. They can reheat something, leftovers from last night's restaurant dinner or whatever. They can do that. But if you just handed one of these young women and, go through my Rolodex, pick anybody who looks like they're probably under 40, call them up and say, I'm about to give you a 20-pound turkey, raw, they would panic. And for us, my generation, that wasn't just Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever. That might have been Sunday dinner once a month. So the fact is we are losing skills. And we are losing skills that some people really enjoy. As I say, cooking was never my thing. I can do it. I can keep myself fed. I could keep a whole family fed. I do have the skill for that. Everyone in my generation basically does. Again, we were taught. But I never really enjoyed it. I do enjoy sewing. And part of the reason that I enjoy sewing is because that allows me to get exactly what I want. And I don't really look forward to living in a world where we all look alike because we can't make our own clothing, and consequently we can only have access to the clothing that our local store is selling, which is a tiny fraction of what is out there in the world for us. Maybe online shopping will help with that, but I doubt very much it's going to have the kind of impact I would like to see. I think that more time goes by, the more people you're going to see who are dressed in exactly the same general style. So, I don't know. That's a problem in my mind. But if that's what they want, I'm going to leave them be free to do that. Their business. For me, it's not what I want. And yes, I want different stuff. I have a very clear idea of what I want to wear. And, well, as witnessed with the Henleys from the stores, even if I can find them, they're just not suitable. Now, this, by the way, I'm not going to tie this up again. This is exactly the sort of thing that I would have purchased back in the day. And of course, I'm purchasing it now. And the reason for that is I don't really think it would have been worth my while to fiddle around with this tiny little buttons and the plaquettes and whatever. It just wouldn't have made sense to me, because if I took the fabric cost, and then added in all of the notions, and then calculated in some reasonable amount of recompense for my time. Well, long before I got to the recompense for my time, I'm pretty sure I would have realized that it was cheaper to buy it than make it. And this is not a fast fashion piece. So this isn't about, let's go to H&M and Shein and whoever and get fast fashion clothing. Oh my goodness, a $2 blouse. No, it's not what it's about. It's simply that the fabric alone, as I say, this is wool. The fabric alone is going to cost more for me to buy it, because I'm buying it retail. There's enough of a markup in that fabric so that a clothing manufacturer having volume savings available to them, I would be making 1, they are making 1,000. They're getting the better prices, they're buying the notions, the buttons, the thread in bulk. Yeah, they can sell it for what would be my cost of fabric alone. I'm okay with that. I really am, especially if it's something that I like. When I start to get not okay with that is things like trousers. So I hate all of the styles of modern trousers. Don't like them. No, nothing appeals to me. So if I'm going to get a pair of trousers I actually will like wearing, I have to make it. That's all there is to it. I have to dig out my 1980s trouser patterns and buy the fabric and create those 1980s trousers that I loved so much at that time. And, oh, and the interesting thing, by the way, is I look at that and I think to myself, nobody is ever going to look at me wearing 1980s trousers saying, oh, well, you're such a dinosaur. No, no, because they are enough like the modern styles that you would get at H&M or Shein or who's the Zara. Oh, Lord, Zara. There's another one. It's not coming to my mind, but they are enough like those styles. But when I make them, they are not going to have that heavy polyester content that you will find in these other stores. So, yeah, nobody's really going to know the difference, but I'm going to be more physically comfortable, and my trousers are going to last me a lot longer. Why? Because they're not polyester. Thank you very much. But I have noticed lately, and this goes back to Joann's bankruptcy, that it's been harder and harder for me to get the fabric, just fabric. Because even though I will go online to fabric stores, and there are some large ones, Mood in the US, that sort of comes to mind, Mood. And then there's like Fabric Warehouse Outlets, something like that. I don't know. I actually have a list of them because I save their websites in a folder in my browser so that when I'm looking for fabric, I can go to online stores that I've had good luck with in the past. Right now, if I want trouser fabric, the first place I start is a shop in the UK. I can't remember the name, but I will put it in the video notes because I like their fabric. And what was the last thing I got from them? Cotton moleskin. And that is also known as combed cotton, brushed cotton, or faux suede. It's just it's 100% cotton, but because the surface of the fabric has been brushed to raise the nap, it does resemble suede. You know, kind of, sort of. You're not going to think it's suede if you actually fondle the fabric, but I suppose from a distance, whatever. Or, to be honest, if you're not accustomed to handling fabric, you might well be duped into thinking it's actually suede. I like it because I like the texture and the finish, and it's cotton, and it's also heavyweight cotton. So, hey, works for me. I want this fabric. Can I buy it in my own country? Oh, and let's remember, I'm not living in Luxembourg. I'm living in the United States. This is a large country. And I not only have access as an American, a North American, to the fabric resources in the US, I have access to the fabric resources in Canada too, which is going to result in lower shipping costs, but I'm still not finding it there either. So I have to have fabric shipped in from Great Britain. It's like something wrong with that picture. But it is because nobody's buying fabric because we're losing the skills. So I think that is essentially what that video, I never watched that video. Did I say that? I think I did. I never watched that video. It showed up in my feed. I saw the title, Joann declaring bankruptcy, and I realized a skill is dying with this store. Not because the store is dying because the skill is just not there anymore. And I think this is something that should trouble all of us, because when we look at this, this is not something wildly complex or excessive. Like, for example, our great-grandfathers knew how to build a barn. Well, yeah, okay, I'm not going to become a barn builder. That is absolutely out there and complicated. No, we're talking about sewing. Sewing is something I started doing when I was very, very young. I was on a sewing machine by the time I was 10, which, I mean, I look at that now and think, would I let a 10-year-old child operate a sewing machine? Ooh, probably not. But hey, different times, you know. Yes, we let kids play on sewing machines, but even the toys we played with as children were so dangerous they were virtually life-threatening. So yeah, different generation. But it was something that even as a child I could do. My first sewing class in school was when I was in the 7th grade, and 11, 12 in the 7th grade? Lord, I'm remembering back. Probably 12 when you go into the 7th grade. We were being taught sewing then on machines. I know, super scary, but that was our lives. And this is a skill that is falling by the wayside. And I'm glad I still have it, because I am not stuck wearing trousers I don't like. And I've gone in to a couple of stores recently and looked around at trousers, if that's what you want to call them. They're not really, they're more like sweatpants made out of some odd fabrics. They have no tailoring to them. You know, you're lucky if you get a zipper or a pocket in them. So that, and I would like pants, by the way, with a zipper and a pocket. I would even compromise on the zipper if I could just get the pocket. But the fact is that if I want what I want, I have to make it myself. And I can do that. We have whole generations of young people growing up without even having that option. So, are they less competent than we were? Are they less self-reliant than we were? No, not at all. So why is it we started learning this before we hit our teens, and they are coming out into the world as grown adults and don't even know how to turn the sewing machine on, never mind operate it? I think we're shortchanging our kids, to tell you the truth, because what we have is a situation in which they are going out into the world as young adults. Oh, and frankly, for many of them, this is striking before they even hit adulthood. It's striking when they are in high school and selecting and perhaps even purchasing their own clothing. It's not their own clothing. They're buying that tiny limited slice of the clothing pie that any given store is making available to them at any given moment. So, given all of the millennia of fashion history, everything they could have available to them if they knew how to make it themselves, and they're getting, it's not even the tip of the iceberg. It's a joke, because for any of you who have gone into stores recently, it all looks alike. Frankly, it all looks alike to me, because in general, I don't like these fashions. But, and by the way, that does give you a certain amount of perspective. You can look at it and say, this is just like that, is just like this one, and I can actually tell you why they are all alike. But the fact is, all right, you can come up, company. I can tell you why they are all alike, but they are all alike. So these kids are coming out into the world with clothing that is looking like something that everybody else around them is wearing. There is no opportunity for them to express their individuality. There is no opportunity for them to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, because they're not seeing that wide variety of options. So, I don't know, that's basically my complaint, is we're losing skills. Beyond that, I think it's we're shortchanging our children, our grandchildren, the subsequent generations, because they're not even aware of the skills they are losing. If you go to a young person and say, do you think you could sew a dress? Their answer is going to be, Lord, no. But here's the thing. They could do it. With a little bit of training, a little bit of coaching, that's all they need, they could make a perfectly passable dress their first go-round. You know how I know this? Because we did it when we were 11 or 12 years old. Absolutely. So it's not as complex, but still, it's falling by the wayside. And I think that's a shame. So that is what I wanted to whine about today. And it's probably a good prelude. I'm going to pick this topic up tomorrow, take it in another direction. But we're going to sign off for now because, of course, I've got a cat. And, yeah, I don't want this to get, like, out of control long. So we will pick this up because this is not the only skill we are losing. And because I went out to 2 different stores, today and yesterday, to try to buy a carrot, one lone carrot, a carrot I wanted. Everybody knows what a carrot is, right? And everybody knows. Go into the store, I would like a carrot. I can't buy one. So we got another skill we are losing. And we'll pick this thread up tomorrow. So, thank you for being with me, and thank you for putting up with my rants and rambles. And I hope to see you tomorrow. In the meanwhile, we're going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. So have a terrific day.